Welcome to another Coffee with Samso. We're here at the UWA Club here in the University of Western Australia, here in Crawley. This is a Coffee with Samso, the 100th episode, a special one. I've got Mark Strizek here, who was the first victim of Coffee with Samso back in 2019. Mark is here for Tietto Minerals Limited, who has a project in Côte d'Ivoire. It's a really good project, which I had the first look at it probably in 2018 at a presentation, and I was sold on it, and I've been chasing Mark to come on Coffee with Samso since then. So welcome, Mark. 100 episodes. You were the first person to put your hand up.
Noel, look, congratulations. I think it's a great achievement. I'm very pleased to be able to be part of the first and also the 100th. And on that, Noel, I think it is important to celebrate your milestones. And here you go, something for you and Sandra, who probably does most of the work in the background.
All right, great. Here we go. Here's the
100th episode, so well done, and I guess we'll be looking forward to the 200th episode, and I'm sure that'll hit very soon as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you. Look, Mark, the Abujar Gold Project. It's and we met. I remember seeing you. You were doing the presentation in 2018. Mm-hmm. Tell us about it. It's a fantastic story.
Look, it is, and it really is about persistence. I was lucky enough to meet Kagan, who's the founder, in 2017 at Indabra. At that time I was the MD of Vital Metals, and looking at the presentation, he was producing 700,000 ounces at the time, and I thought, wow, he's really onto something here. We got talking, and I was lucky enough to be able to join Kagan in July 17. Stepping back a little bit, it really is this case that these things, Tietto, this is a discovery. It was Kagan's the founder at Tietto, and he'd been exploring in West Africa from about 2010. He founded the company. Was able to raise some money from high net worth, so it wasn't a listed company. Jumped into Liberia during Ebola, so he's got some big kahunas, and we still have those projects. One of them's along strike from Iti, and we think they could have some prospects in the future. But he made the decision to go across into Côte d'Ivoire in 2012, and got in there not long after the there was a civil war, the crisis as the Ivorians call it. And I think that's the key, is that in this game you're always looking for opportunity, and Côte d'Ivoire has a lot of greenstone, the beryllium greenstones, and had been extensively explored, but the Civil War put a hold on that. And Kagan turned up in the country as some of the majors were leaving, and I think at the time it might have been Newmont offered him the office as they were getting out, and that's always a good sign when the majors are getting out. Have they been in there? It creates lots of opportunity. So he actually managed to make some networks and make some good friends that are still our friends, and I'm happy to say shareholders, with Bamba and Fred. Discovered probably about 400,000 ounces in one project, and put some money into that, and unfortunately the government said, sorry, that's in a forest reserve. But at 14, this is the way, the things that happen in exploration. But in 14 he was able to visit Abujar with the team, with Fred, and looked over what was an artisanal pit. There was around about 20,000 people at the time. Kagan's background, he's a mining engineer, and looking at how many people were there, he goes, this is a gold mine already. So was able to work out a deal, working with Fred, peg the ground, and was able to get on the ground drilling at the end of 14. At the end of 15, 16, released the first resource. So it's one of these cases, is that you take some risks, and Kagan and mining engineers discovered 3 million ounces. Well, it's 3.35 million ounces. So the key was, I'd been exploring with Vital in Burkina. We'd explored into Niger, and at that time, 14, 15, it was very hard to raise money, and Kagan had done an incredible job being able to tap a number of high net worths, and they'd kind of run out of steam. So it was time for some new shareholders to get invested. So this was the story that we were able to introduce Kagan to Francis Harper, who'd been the founding chairman of West African Resources. Francis had joined the board of Vital. We were able to look at how we could assist Kagan. Vital at the time had a tungsten project. We also had a $3 million facility with Macquarie, so that wasn't the right vehicle. But we could see that what Kagan was onto was something substantial. And I'm very happy to say they were able to join the board, Francis and myself. Francis and his team from Blackwood Capital were able to provide some seed, and were able to list Tietto in 18. And look, it's been a pretty incredible journey. We've grown quickly and very much a focus. I think with Tietto, it's all about the shareholders. We're all shareholders, and Kagan had founded this company with a view to provide a cash flow for shareholders. Obviously, exploration is risky. I think the fact that there was a large artisanal field, that took out some of that exploration risk. So to a degree, he's moved a lot quicker than some of the others have when you think about it, from 14 to 16 to listing in 18 with 700,000 ounces. And now we're up 3.35 million ounces, nearly 3.4. So we've got this line of sight and all on building a gold mine. Pretty simple. Explore, build a mine, produce gold bars. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is that simple. It's complicated, but it's simple in that sense. But moving from your experience in Africa, I remember we talked about it while you were at Vital, and you said, no, this is a fantastic project in Africa and everything else, and you were really, really upbeat on it. How did that help you to sort of identify, or not to say identify, but to look at what Tietto had and say, you know what, this is actually very good? Because I think a lot of eyes would have looked at it and had all the fear of Africa and being remote and things like that. So how did that help you in sort of relaying that as a positive?
Yeah, so look, it's right. You could see, and we can cast a mind back, we remember Orbis with that discovery, and they were able to sell that project on for a substantial sum in what was a relatively depressed market. Same with Kiddo at Ampella. We had 10 to 15,000 people working there. I think that's one of the keys, is that when you've got that much humanity, toiling away, there's normally something there. So that was the key, and I think the other aspect was that Kagan and this deposit, Abujar, he drilled it with, at the time it was only about 11,000 metres of drilling. So you've got this, I think the scale of Abujar is the key, is that it's a big structure. We've got pegged over 70 kilometres, and it's bigger than that. It's a province scale. But you could see that there was a resource model. So I was able to take the initial JORC resource that was on it, it was all inferred, and I threw it into a little optimisation in Micromine and ran some numbers, and you can see, you go, we just need to make this thing bigger. This could throw up a lot of cash. We just didn't have the mine life. I ran it using, say, a 2 million tonne per annum operation, similar to what West African were looking at, and general numbers, and plug it in. And you could see the first year that this was going to generate a lot, and we only had at the time around about 3 or 4 years mine life, and not quite enough. But the signs were there, and you go, right, when you've got that initial resource, and you could see that, importantly, it was going to generate early payback. And that's the key, not just for Africa, for many projects, is it does take a substantial amount of capital, and you've got to be able, the debt guys are all about downside. You know, we're all about the upside, but the debt guys are always looking at the risk. And when you can have an early payback, that's what I could see in this, that this was going to generate on a simple, you know, if it was just an equity model, you know, less than a year. That was the key, and you know, the light goes, bingo, you know, we're onto something here. Showed it to Francis, and you know, we said, right, what can we do to be a part of this? Because Kagan had done the hard work, you know, setting up the company, pegging the ground, and now it was, I wouldn't say it's relatively easy, but it was, we had a fairly large target, and it was about the drilling to be able to grow it. And you know, that initial IPO, and again, you know, it's about people as well. We were able to attract Ron Sayers that came in from Ausdrill, and Ron had saved my bacon at Vital. He'd put in some cash that allowed us to drill some holes in Burkina Faso. And Ron had also put money into West African resources. You know, it was that last roll of the dice. And that's the thing, is this game, never give up, because your fortunes can turn. If you believe in your project, eventually you'll always be able to find the money.
How many stories you've heard of that last roll of the dice that created the story, right?
You know, West African, you know, Ron had put in $1 million and Richard had to find another $1 million, that $2 million, and there was that discovery, you know, finding that underground. And that's what's so exciting about this game, is that persistence, you know, is critically important, and having the right kind of people that, you know, that's what's so exciting about working with Tietto is, yeah, look, we're so focused on being very, very careful with shareholders' funds. We're shareholders. And that experience in Vital, you know, trying to, and you've been there as well, trying to keep the lights on, you know, making those dollars last as long as you can. And I think one of the keys with Tietto was that we're able, drilling is critically important. If you don't drill, you cannot grow. But drilling is very, very expensive. And so often you get trapped into raising a bit of money, doing a campaign, and it's never enough. You're never able to really show what your resources got. And Kagan, to his credit, was able to, we started with 1 rig, and then 2 and 3 and 4, and we've just been able to take control of our costs. And we've drilled an incredible amount of drilling we've probably saved ourselves, and I think it was in the last presentation, nearly $16 million US on this. And that goes, that's raises we didn't need to raise. That's shareholders not having to go in their pockets and fund more money. And we've been able to drill a lot, and we continue to drill a significant amount. So I think that's one of the keys is that we knew we were onto something, so that kind of took away a little bit of some of that risk. But it still is, you know, it's risky, because you go, you know, are we going to be able to do it? Others have tried it. West African ran some of their own drill rigs. They did a pretty good job at it. And then Archie at Cardinal was running his own RC rigs. Kagan has built up great drillers. We've been able to work with the local community to build up a team of drilling offsiders. And the critical part of this was logistics. So we have a couple of containers arriving every probably 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. And that's the key. I think when we started, and you know, everyone thought, yeah, you guys, this is going to fail. But it didn't, you know.
Yeah, I remember your presentation, and I looked at, and I didn't know, I sort of heard of Tietto, but I didn't know about where you were, what kind of geology. And a couple of things that blow me away, which what you've touched on. One was, I looked at where you guys, I said, oh, this is a drilling project, because you've got the resources, you've got the strike, you seem to know where you're going, and the numbers are there. Therefore, I think at that time you had, like you said, I think 750,000 ounces or something like that. So obviously, it's not a discovery needed to be made. It's a discovery made, but it's a building exercise, like you said. And then you went and talked about that you're going to have your own drilling rigs and things. I think pricing quote, correct me if I'm wrong, was about 25, 30 US per meter. And I sat there and I thought, wow, that's cheap. You know, that's... So I walked away. I remember telling someone who I was there with somebody and said, no, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Because your biggest cost has just been reduced to 30 US a meter. And as you said, you know, that's what happened. But, you know, nothing is always a straightforward thing. But, you know, if you can save 60 odd million over that time frame, which is a lot of money, a lot of money, right? And you guys have built up 3.35 million ounces.
Yep.
To me, it was a no-brainer thing. It was just you're just gonna, and I think after that, not long ago, after that, I was at Diggers, and I looked at one of the maps. Another company, I forget their names now, and I didn't realize that Côte d'Ivoire had multi-million ounces projects everywhere. So, looking at that, how do you guys, you know, obviously this is, you're at 3.35, you're waiting for your DFS, and so there's lots of things that have passed since that moment that I saw your presentation.
Yep.
So what is happening now? You know, waiting for DFS means a lot more than waiting for DFS.
Yeah, look, that's right. So we've been able to deliver a PFS this year, and that you know, really gave the board the comfort to push ahead. And I think the key, when you look at it, is the fact that we've been able to grow the resources since that time, and importantly, the amount of indicated. When we released the PFS, we had a smaller amount of indicated in the model. We had about 1.25 million ounces. And that meant that our reserve was probably a little bit small. It was about 800,000 ounces or so. We showed an expanded case in there that was round about just under 1.5 million ounces, and that was coming from an open pit at AG, an oxide, predominantly an oxide pit at APG, and also an underground underneath that main AG core. So that was the number that, and we wanted to show that because we were well through the drilling program. We just hadn't quite completed it, but we knew we were going to be able to convert a significant amount of inferred resources into indicated. And that's what we're able to do just recently. So we've grown our indicated resources to around about 1.85 million ounces. We've got about 1.65 coming from AG, and we've got a contiguous zone there now. We've got the AG core area, which has higher grades and grades right at surface, and then we've got AG South, which performed better than we anticipated, and actually is our project high number is inside there, so that's quite close to surface. And then we grew about 200,000 ounces at APG that's moved into indicated as well. So that's what we've been able to do, and the mining guys have that model, and they're working through optimization and mine scheduling. And yeah, that's going to be the big difference. So I think the key for all shareholders is the PFS is really, it's out of date, and we are now looking at a substantial increase in the reserves and mine life, and that will be coming out towards the end of this quarter. So definitely something to look forward to. Some of the other things that we've been able to do, we've assembled, you know, I think probably one of the brokers that looks at these things probably said we've probably got one of the best mine builders in West Africa. That's Matt Wilcox and his team. They did a fantastic job for Richard Hyde at West African. You know, they're a team that have worked together on multiple projects from Nord Gold to WAF. They like each other's company. They like getting in there and getting the job done and doing it significantly cheaper than if you pushed all that risk to a contractor. So it's pretty exciting for Tietto now to have this capacity. If it was just Kagan and I and you'd be kind of worried. But no, look,
Yeah.
well, we've got a great mining team, and this is where, when you look at Regis and Capricorn and Emerald with Mick Evans, I think it is, so when you can have that, and it's something that, again, it's about people and having that right team that can manage this and work with the contractors. So we're not going to build it by ourselves. We're going to work with a team of contractors that are very comfortable working in West Africa. And that's one of the keys. Everyone talks about risk and so forth. And when you look at the execution of West African projects, it's been phenomenal. In our last presentation, look, and it's a nod to Orezone. You look at WAF, ahead of time, under budget. Perseus did a great job. And that's 2 projects at Yare that went through COVID. And they delivered on time and under budget. And then you've got the Nord Gold projects that Matt was associated with and his team that were delivered ahead of time and under budget. So the lenders do hold you to a higher degree, but there's a great resource of engineering companies that are very happy to work there, and they get the job done. And we've got Matt and his team, we've got Guillaume on the surface management, he's been in logistics, Denny on some of the management side there in Beatrice and HSE. So we've got that key component that's required to get this built. We've been able, Matt came on board, and again we are looking at what we can do to de-risk the project. And the mill is the heart of any project, and I'm happy to say we're able to pick up a mill. Matt had noted we were looking to tender that, and we've scored a mill that was unused, a Mezzo mill. It's currently being refurbished, will be delivered to site. So that's one area off that critical path that's gone. On the plant side, we're virtually that work is done, and we're moving into the detailed engineering, what's called the feed side as well. So we're doing as much as we can do without committing a lot of cash as we start looking at that project lending. But it means our DFS numbers are going to be very well supported with tender bids, with packages, and those contingencies will come down. And so it's a pretty exciting time for us. Looking forward to being able to get that out and share that with our shareholders. And it's making that, where we're sitting now, we're having early discussion with the project finance guys, from conventional debt to the debt funds. So look, there's an appetite. As you and I know, you put your money in, you don't get much return from the bank, so they want to make some money. When you look at West African, they were funded by Taurus, a substantial component, relatively leveraged. Those guys are probably going to have that paid off very close by the end of the year. So the good thing, it's been done before, and we are following a pretty traditional path in this game.
So in terms of the capital markets, obviously you've touched on that, so they are pretty comfortable with that. I mean, we're living in probably a sort of ongoing inflationary pressure kind of situation in the world, but so how do they, what are they saying to you? Are you hearing that they're all gung-ho for it, or are they having some sort of reservation? If so, what are they?
Yeah, so look, the appetite is definitely there. We've been able to have good discussions with them. The key is all about the DFS, and that's not too far away, the end of this quarter. So that's probably the key for most of those groups, is working out what our debt capacity is, stress testing it. And we think from the PFS, when you looked at that, we're able to get this to work down to, we are down to 1,200 or so. So pretty dire circumstances, the project can still cover it, return the capital back, and provide comfort to lenders. So I think that's it. The other area obviously is ESG. So we're working through that, and lenders have different appetites on those areas. So we're working our way through the negotiations with landowners. We've got the environmental approval from the government for a 30 million tonne tailings dam and a large project. The support, we've got the mining licence in play. So we're in the final piece of the puzzle. And I think it's one of the keys we're trying to work to equator principles wherever possible. That's in our mind. And we are working with the local communities on the projects that would, for initial land clearing, purchasing, relocation. There's only a modest amount of people within the, it's around about 200 families or so. So it's not a large amount of community that needs to be removed. We've had the project baseline set in last year in September, and we're looking at, there's a range there of farmers that had come with that initial, and a large proportion of the farmers tend to be either Malian or Burkinabe, and most of them want to go home. So some of those people had come in that initial big boom of that artisanal mining. So the artisanal mining, that was established post the Ivorian crisis. So you had people coming in from Mali and Burkina. And one of the keys was that there was nowhere, Abujar, where the AG is, there wasn't really a lot of cropping and so forth, farming on that. So that's why they were able to really get established. The government in 2015, as law and order, and there was a number of artisanal fields around the country, they removed those people, and a large proportion of it was sent back to those countries. And really now there's probably only about a couple of hundred across that whole strike length. So there's very little artisanal mining. So this really provides the project, and it's one of the keys when you have discussion with lenders is that the opportunities that are provided for the local communities are immense in terms of employment. And normally for every person we employ, they would be providing for their families. So it's a multiplier effect. These are a large case skilled jobs. Unlike here in Australia, very few people know how to drive relative compared to here. Everyone knows how to drive, but we can provide that new workforce in terms of driving trucks, working in plant, the construction, talking to the guys at Perseus during Yare. I think the only areas they weren't able to fill was or having difficulty with some of the skilled, real high-level welding and so forth. But I think you did say at the start, so you've got Perseus with 2 projects, Sissingi and Yare. Then you've got Endeavour with Iti. There's the Africa Gold Group now with Bonacro and Agbao. And there's also up in the north there's Barrick with Tongon. So there's large operations. So the country does have a history. There's certainly a lot more upside and a lot more exploration that you're going to see more and more gold projects built. For our first attempt, Abujar is sized at a Yare scale. So this is a big project that's going to generate a significant amount of ounces. It's got us, from the DFS, there's going to be a significant amount of mine life in that. And upside as well, as you said, one of the keys, having that drill fleet with a large strike extent, multiple corridors of mineralisation. We're going to be busy here for many, many years growing resources on this alone.
Look, I mean, my optimism of the thing. I like the project and have liked it for a long time. But to play a devil's advocate, what could be the deal breaker here? That's something that you guys, I'm sure, on the DFS you would have factored that in as well in some ways.
Yeah. So, look, ESG is the focus, and we really believe And we've had the support of the government as well. I think the key for us has been that we've built an incredible team of Ivorians to be able to work and develop from geology. And we've recently appointed a number to assist us as we move forward that ESG side. From the commercial banks, Equator Principles is something that they're very focused on. We will be trying to be able to meet that. And I think as we travel through this process of completing these land acquisitions, I think we're going to be able to address most of their questions and be able to identify the value for communities as well. So it's a case that we feel very strongly that we've been able to operate there since late 14, 15 in these communities. If you don't do the right thing, the population normally lets you know. So we've got very, very strong support. So I think we'll be able to demonstrate that to the lenders and bring them on board. On the other fronts, look, we're seeing some inflation in terms of steel price, shipping prices. It largely is focused on some of the Asian ports. When you look at Europe and so forth, it's not so there. But it's a relatively modest aspect, and Matt and his team are keeping a close eye as they go through the engineering side, and there's nothing there that's giving us great concern.
It doesn't sound like deal breakers. I mean, that's...
No, look, it's right. It's one of these things, we don't want to appear flippant about it, but we've been operating a long time in Côte d'Ivoire, got good support. Kagan's meeting with the new mines minister. The Ivorians mining probably only accounts for about 2% of GDP, and they have a desire to be able to lift that to 4%. So, it's an economy that has cocoa and coffee. Now, look, it's one of the areas there. I mean, I think probably we've got a very aggressive timeline. We'll be trying to push the guys to try and keep up with us. As we've shown from our drilling, we don't always try and follow the standard way, of doing things. So look, and that's why we tried to engage early with the lenders to bring them up. Getting the DFS done, that's really the one piece of the puzzle that's required so that they can price everything out. And so, look, we'll be running pretty hard. We've got, as we said, at the end of June, 45 million of cash. It's a reasonable amount that allows us to prosecute our strategy. The DFS, that's all we can priced and costed, so we can complete that, and we can continue to explore as well. So no, look, it's I mean, barring a major catastrophe, look, we think we're in a pretty good place. Matt's and his team have built up a schedule. We still think getting that funding in, we can deliver gold in Q4 next year.
I mean, in terms of where Tietto is, I think in terms of funding, in this sector, you're not going to, can't foresee any issues. But let's, we're assuming, and by the looks of how things are going, the actual mining of Abujar is probably like a done deal, in my opinion, anyway. And Tietto is going to have that process sort of ticked off as in the next 18 months or so. Mm-hmm. So what's post this for Tietto? I mean, this is in the bag. Let's just put it like that. Mm-hmm. What's post this?
Yeah. So look, it's a fair point, and the market wants to know exactly what happens next. So I think we're in a pretty good place for organic growth to be able to grow, obviously Abujar in terms of the resource base. But aside from that, we've got ground we're exploring at Bunganu, which is to the east of us, just above Abujar. It's still early stages yet. There's some artisanal workings there. We're doing some soil sampling campaigns and hope to be able to do some drilling. In Liberia, we've got
2 projects there, one of them a long strike from Iti. So with further, that could develop into a resource. It's early stages yet, but there's plenty of artisanal gold around there as well. The work just needs to be done, and we're doing some work on that. And then up in the north, around Tongon and Sisingi, we've got Bundiali. We've got some ground there that we're looking to get granted, and that's in a pretty exciting, a golden triangle, you could almost say. So there's potentially a couple of projects there. So internally, the company's well placed with our drill capacity. It's not a stretch for us to be able to increase on that and take the lessons learned at Abujar and move, as we could identify drilling targets, to move them there as well, and grow our resource base and turn Tietto into a multi-project company. And just in Côte d'Ivoire, there's a couple there, as we talked about, and there's also across multiple jurisdictions in Liberia as well.
Yeah, I think when I remember the very first time I looked at it, and after sort of acquainting myself with what Côte d'Ivoire has, there is a lot of, it's literally, a lot of people actually don't realise this, it's just a massive greenstone belt, right? It's literally what we know in Australia, but it's in Africa.
Yep.
And the potential of building on that resource, I guess it's like here, except it's in, you've got more trees and that kind of hurdles to get through, right? Mm-hmm. So in terms of exploration, how does it differ to, how do you see are the key points in how you guys will move forward, in terms of logistics and things like that?
Yep. Yeah, look, in some ways, a lot of the techniques that have been used here in Western Australia are very applicable. I think one of the differences is that there's probably, you walk around and there's a lot more people on the ground, unlike, going out behind Kalgoorlie and so forth, where there's relatively few. Now that we've been able to successfully demonstrate our ability to manage our own multiple rigs, I think that gives us a lot of key, is that we've got a base, we've got a team of geologists that are multi-million ounce discoverers, and they're very excited at the opportunities that are ahead of us. Getting this Abujar underway, built, and assuming everything goes as we think it will, we've got a lot of opportunity just along Abujar there. We've got 70k of strike, we've got 3 tenements. All the work to date's only on the middle. We've been doing some work at Isia to the south of us. There's multiple targets, and we're looking at doing some air core work on there, proving that up for some diamond drilling. We've also got another joint venture in the north there. So probably there is this ability to grow. And looking aside from the projects we have very good connection with Bamba and Fred, who are on the ground with a number of other projects that they've been able to peg and so forth. So Kagan's got a relationship and an agreement with those guys to be able, if there's anything that comes up, we get a first right of refusal on that. So puts us in a very good position to look at further opportunities. As I said, just within our own stable, there's some very good potential to grow and discover new resources in there and grow the base. And hopefully look at this becoming Abujar's our first, and building up into a multiple projects and lifting that ounce profile. We're looking at trying to build on, from the PFS, we're looking at that first year 200,000 ounces, and thereafter around just under 170,000 for 6 years. The DFS, we want to try and improve on that, but it's a substantial, and as we've seen what Perseus has done, growing multiple projects and pushing up into that next tier. We've got a lot of prospects that look that could deliver. We just need to do the work, and our strategy is to try and grow this into a grow from that 200,000, from little thing, big things grow, and that's the key for us. And we'll be looking to leverage and keep Matt's team busy and build our next project. That's the plan, Noel. So we'll see where we can go.
I mean, look, it's my thoughts are, it's as I've said, it's a very going back to what you said. It's a very, very simple process. It's a technically complicated, simple process, if you want to use those words. And I think the resources there, the growth is there. I mean, for a lot of guys who've actually, we've really never had an African project on Coffee with Samso, and this is a good lesson in the sense that although it's in Africa, and let's say everyone sort of think it's really hard, but you got to remember that lots of operations have succeeded well. And I know in your presentation you mentioned all those projects coming under budget and being on schedule. I think that's a lot of new investors got to understand, even though in our new world, it works, and it has worked for decades, right? And it's not complicated. It's no more complicated than here. It's just a different shade of how you do things. Look, Mark, fantastic. Look, been a long time chasing you guys to get onto Coffee with Samso. Finally done it. Thank you for your time, and it's a fantastic story for guys. Look, really do your own research on this, and I'm sure Mark will be happy to take questions. It's not that hard, like in many processes. It's the key was that resources there. They got a big province kind of scale project, you want to put it that way, and it's already on the way. Once you're at that DFS stage, you're really almost a done deal. Not to jinx it, but you're ticking boxes to get there. Let's put it this way: you will not be at that stage if you didn't have it. But Mark, thank you and appreciate it. Let's follow the journey.
Thanks, Noel.